Hi, I'm Theresa Guertin. I'm the managing partner of Saxe, Doernberger, and Vita's home office in Connecticut. SDV represents policyholders in all manner of insurance coverage disputes, including those in the directors and officers and employment practices liability insurance arena. So today we're going to have a brief question and answer session with the members of our directors and officers practice group about EPLI insurance. Since we've been getting a lot of questions from our clients about this particular line of coverage. So let me introduce you to our panelists this morning from the practice group. First, we have Grace Hebbel, who's a partner in our Connecticut office. Then we have Alex O'Neill, a senior associate in our Connecticut office, and Jessie Hidell-Carrijo, an associate in our California office. So let's start off with you, Grace. Can you give us some groundwork for the discussion today? What is an EPLI policy and what does it cover?
Absolutely, Theresa. So EPLI stands for Employment Practices Liability Insurance. So basically, if you are a company and you have employees, you should strongly consider getting an EPLI policy. And a typical insuring agreement provides coverage for loss arising out of an employment practices claim that's made against the insured during the policy period for a wrongful act. Essentially, this provides coverage for employee lawsuits arising out of claims of discrimination, harassment, wrongful termination, defamation, retaliation, and invasion of privacy claims.
Great, thanks, Grace. So Alex, can you tell us a little bit about what claims typically look like that are handled under EPLI policies?
Sure. So as Grace mentioned, there are several different types of claims and liability that might lead to an EPL claim. In particular, I'm going to discuss discrimination claims, harassment claims, and retaliation claims. A typical discrimination claim will happen when an employee alleges that they have been discriminated against or treated differently or unfairly because they were in a protected class, such as age, sex, sexual preference, disability, race, national origin, just to name a few. A harassment claim will occur when an employee alleges that they are being physically or verbally harassed in the workplace. Most likely, the typical claims are based on sexual harassment. We've seen an increase in these types of claims because of the Me Too movement, but harassment doesn't have to be sexual in nature. Finally, retaliation claims typically occur when an employee has made a prior claim of discrimination or harassment, and then now they're alleging that they were retaliated against because of that complaint. Retaliation can mean that their pay was reduced, or perhaps they were terminated. So those are just a few examples of typical EPL claims.
Great, thanks, Alex. Obviously, the hot topic for the past year has been the COVID-19 pandemic. Jessie, why don't you tell us what types of claims we're seeing related to the pandemic that are being handled by EPLI?
Sure. So as we all know, COVID-19 has caused a lot of drastic changes and hardships in the workplace. Businesses have been shut down, employees have gotten sick at work, many have been furloughed or laid off, and many more of us are working from home. All of these events have really opened the door for claims that trigger EPLI policies. As Alex and Grace have explained, EPLI coverage is triggered when an employer is sued by their employee for some type of wrongful employment practice. So with COVID-19, we're generally seeing lawsuits filed by employees alleging wrongful acts such as refusal to give reasonable accommodations, like working from home, being wrongfully terminated when maybe a company's been forced to shut down and let some people go, or being retaliated against for certain protected COVID-19 related actions. The lawsuits we're seeing generally allege violations of certain laws that are established to protect employees, such as the Families First Coronavirus Response Act or similar state paid family leave acts. Also Americans with Disability Act and the Equal Employment Opportunity laws, as well as whistleblower protection laws. There's also been a lot of cases filed alleging retaliation for complaints about the employer's failure to keep the workplace safe, which are also likely to trigger EPLI coverage. However, not all EPLI coverage is the same, so it's very important to know the specifics of your own company's insuring agreement and pay attention to what exclusions you're going to need to watch out for.
That's great, Jessie. Yeah, so there are lots of exclusions in EPLI policies that are unique. Grace, why don't you tell us a little bit about some common exclusions that businesses should be aware of?
Sure. So as you mentioned, and as Jesse alluded to, there are many, so I'll just highlight a few today. Claims for certain workplace statutes are typically excluded under EPLI policies. These include, for example, OSHA, COBRA, FLSA, and the Family and Medical Leave Act. Most EPL policies also contain exclusions for loss related to bodily injury. The scope of applicability to the bodily injury exclusion to a claim depends on whether the policy excludes claims specifically for bodily injury or whether it excludes claims arising out of bodily injury. Some EPLI policies also contain a pollution exclusion, and this exclusion is particularly relevant when analyzing coverage for claims arising out of COVID-19, as Jesse was describing. In this vein, you'll want to check to see if the pollution exclusion includes the arising out of language, which is traditionally interpreted very broadly by courts. And you'll also want to review the definition of pollutant if the policy defines the term. Pollutant might be defined to include contaminants, which might also include viruses or bacteria. And as you can imagine, there's an argument that these encompass COVID-19, so that could be particularly problematic.
Thanks, Grace. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about claims. Alex, can you tell us about some claims where it's been a little bit unusual or unexpected and how EPLI responded?
Sure. One that I've seen in the headlines recently involves Canon USA Inc. Canon was subject to a ransomware attack in late 2020, and as a result of the attack, the attackers were able to extract personal information related to employees, both current and former employees. That information included social security numbers, birth dates, and account numbers. And so as a result, the employees filed a class action lawsuit against Canon, alleging that Canon negligently protected their information. I think, first blush, most policyholders would suspect that a perhaps kidnapper ransom or a cyber policy would respond to provide coverage. But although I'm not privy to Canon's policy, EPL coverage often will respond to this type of employee class action because it involves an invasion of privacy. So based on the complaint and the specific allegations and their specific provisions in the EPL policy, we would expect that a policy would respond to this type of class action and cover both defense costs as well as any settlement or judgment that was involved in the litigation.
Great, thank you. Well, that's all we have for today. So thank you to Alex, Grace, and Jesse for providing some insight on this important line of coverage. As I think you can see, EPLI might have a large role to play in the coming months and years as different claims arise out of the Me Too movement or COVID. And it can be a very complicated line of coverage to untangle. So if you have any questions about EPLI or about D&O insurance, please feel free to contact us, to reach out to us. You can also take a look at our D&O practice group site on our webpage at www.sdblaw.com for more information and for links to other relevant content relating to EPLI and D&O. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing from you.